Okay, I'm just gonna go ahead and go through making what I'm gonna demo in during the studio on Monday. So I'm just gonna start with like a simple shape, square again. I'm gonna show you how I kind of made the pattern I did. If you hold shift, it will constrain your proportions. And you probably don't want to have outline mode on, so make sure that you turn that over here in the left hand corner. All right, and V is going to be like your main selection tool, so if you ever need to get out of whatever you're in, just hit V. Okay, so Command C will copy it and Command F will put it in the front, and then if you hold shift you can drag it and it will snap, you see, on that line, which is great. Okay, so I set my distance, and then what I'm going to do again is do Command C, Command F, whoops, and you're going to select both, holding shift again. But like, you know, like this is just an example of how I'm generating these patterns. You can use any shape you want, but this is kind of the process. Okay, I'm just kind of copying, pasting in front, and then just dragging them down. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to group these, Command G, and I'm just going to go ahead and pull up my Align tab, which you can do going to Windows and Align right here. F7 if you have a keyboard where it's easy to press F7, up arrow and F7. Yep. And this panel I like to keep open while I'm doing these patterns because it has my transform commands, Align, and Pathfinder, and I'm going to use all of those. Another thing I want to turn on is my rulers. So go to View, and then you go down to Rulers and Show Rulers, because I'm going to use those in a little bit. And one thing that's really cool with the rulers is if you drag from this top corner over here, whoops, don't do that though. If you drag from this top corner right here, you see you can pull out a line and set where the 0 begins, which is really great because you can find the center of your page super easily. Just bam, resets it. So now this reads 0 to 6. Okay, but I'm going to put it back on this page since I'm working on this document. All right, so from here, I don't know if I grouped them. I'm going to group them again, Command G, and what you can do is you can align them. This align tool, you can either align to selection if you have something else selected first and then you select a larger group, or you can align to Artboard. I usually use align to Artboard more frequently, I guess you could say. So I'm going to take this and do Command C, Command F, and I'm going to click and drag it out again. All right, I'm going to take both of these and just move them like this. So what I want to do now is draw some guidelines. So I want to pull a line so I can tell how much room I have to shrink. And sometimes Illustrator, like, it gets a little, sometimes you have to zoom in pretty close to make sure that it's a line. So if you have to zoom in close, don't be like, why do I have to do this? Because it's super common. And I always have to zoom in and out. Okay, so from there, I'm going to hold shift and take this corner and drag it down. Okay, so that's about there. So if you hold shift again, anytime I move an object, I like to hold shift because it constrains it. And since this is a more not organic pattern, I mean, you could do organic shapes with it. It's still kind of nice when you're doing pattern repeats to utilize the grids and the alignment systems that they have in the program. So let's see. So let's say that I want the top of this to align with that. I'm going to probably pull another grid line. I work very organically, so if it seems all over the place, some of it is just because I'm figuring out on the fly, okay, how can I make this fit here? So sometimes I'll pull lines, even when I was like, oh, I didn't think I was going to pull a line there, but yes. Okay, so I want to line that there. Okay, and so that, because this fits here, which is about half of this, I'm going to do Command C, Command F, pull it to the top, just like that. If you are OCD, I mean, sometimes I do this. In fact, actually, probably a lot of times I do this. You know, make sure that your stroke though path is off to do this. A lot of times, if I want to be super OCD, is I'll pull these. So then I can make sure that they're the right different distance away. But you see right now how it's snapping like that, and I can't quite get it. So that's because of some settings that I have turned on. So, well, I don't even know why that's on. If you go up to a view, this is going to be your snap settings. Turn off snap to point. Also turn off snap to grid if it's snapping to your grid. Whoop. Okay, maybe I'm wrong. Snap to point and then turn off snap to pixels. Whoops. Let's see. Yep. Okay, so I was wrong. So yeah, snap to point. You want to have your snap to pixels turned off. Yeah, and then it should be able to snap right there. But if you do have any problems in the future, because sometimes it's based off your general Illustrator settings too. You can change your keyboard increment right here, which is really nice. So if it's still, even with snap to point selected and it's still giving you trouble, try changing your keyboard increment setting, and that should take care of it. Okay, so yeah, like I said, if you want to be super OCD and make sure they're the same, and they're not, even though they visually look the same. So what I do is I'll select these guys and I'll just drag them, and then I'll just delete these because I don't need them anymore. And then from here, like what I did with the pattern that I printed, I showed you guys in Studio, is that I started laying these out and then deleting squares. And so I'm going to do that. So now I have 3 separate groups. I actually want to group them all together, so then when I move them, I don't lose that alignment. So Command G, Command C, Command F, paste right on front, and then I'm going to drag it up. Although, before I do that, what I'm going to do is come back up here, put snap to pixel. Because if you see how all of a sudden now I'm starting to get those guidelines. Yeah, so those are great to have sometimes. Yeah, and I kind of go back and forth, you know, maybe I do want to like check the alignment of that, you know. You don't have to though. I mean, this is maybe a little more OCD than some of you like to work. Totally up to you, but that one was okay, so I don't need to change my grid settings or snap settings. Okay, so from here you can select this top part and go to right click, because another thing I use a lot is this transform. You could also access it right here, but I tend to use the right click option more often. Transform, and you can do reflect, and I'm going to reflect it this direction, vertical. Okay, just so I have some variation. Okay, and what I'm going to do for you guys to see this, oh, when you draw these guidelines and you highlight over them, no, they are locked. Okay, so if you draw over this and you go to move this and it's moved your grid lines, you don't want them to move, go to view again, guides, and then hit lock guides. Mine say unlock because they're already locked, but if they're giving you trouble, it will say lock, and that's how you can do that. Okay, so I'm just gonna go ahead and just duplicate this. Sometimes I like to keep copies of what I'm working on in different stages, so then if I don't like something, I can go back super easily. Just kind of a practice. I mean, if you look in these other documents, you can see I kind of do that, so you can see so also I can reference, okay, how did I get here? I did this was the sample that you guys saw in Studio, where I sort of did the same things. It was just this basically arrangement of cubes and copying them and tiling them and then deleting parts of it and reflecting it. That's essentially what I'm doing right now. Just figured I would show you guys a fresh document from the very beginning. Okay, so from here, I'm going to right click and ungroup. Right click and ungroup, so now these don't move. Well, there's also these smaller groups. I also forgot about these. So you might have to ungroup a couple different times depending on how many groups you have, which isn't a big deal. Just right click and ungroup. Okay. Let's see, maybe I want to delete one here and maybe delete one here. And then maybe here, and then let's see, maybe there. Totally winging this. So that's how I always do this. So it's all about the winging. All right. Yeah, so I just pretty much go in and start deleting sections. Let's see, maybe I'll delete that one. Okay, so from here, what I'm going to probably do is first delete these grid lines because actually they're kind of in my way right now. So I'm going to unlock, just drag and hit delete. Okay. So that said, there's this part of the pattern I don't really need. I'm kind of liking what's going on here, and not so much on this side, so I might just select those and bring them to the side, and then just take this part of the pattern. And like right now, I have literally no idea what I'm making, so completely, this is exactly how I do it. Go in with, I mean, you can sketch if you want, but I kind of like the freedom of just working and letting it kind of come to be what it's going to be. So I'm going to do a cut here. I mean, you can use the pen tool, but I want to show you the Pathfinder tool. So I'm just trying to think, what shape am I going to do? Okay, I think I'm just going to do a circle. So if you just drag it, it's going to be like an oval. Not really what I want. But if you hold shift, it will constrain like your shape to its proportions. Okay, so let's say I'm going to do this circle. And maybe I want the circle like to cut these shapes right here. Yeah. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these three, since it doesn't really overlap with these shapes, it's just these, and I'm going to group them so then they're one object, and this is one object because Pathfinder needs two layers or two objects overlapping to work. I'm going to select both of them, but I need this circle on top. If it's not on top, and say this is on top, you could send it to back. Oh, actually it didn't work. Send it back. That didn't work. Because sometimes it depends. Or you bring it front. But I guess it was already in the back. That's why. Yeah, that's why. Mine was already in the back. Yeah, so you need to make sure the shape that you want to get rid of is on top. Select both of them and then click this intersect. Uh-oh. Actually. And I'm not quite sure why that didn't work. Okay. Oh, okay. Now minus front. But these are grouped. Interesting. Let me see something. Okay. I think it's because those shapes don't overlap. Even though they're grouped, it should cut. But what I have noticed with the Pathfinder tool is that basically whatever you're trying to do, delete something, get rid of something, you know, get the intersection of something, if you go to this one, which is divide, it always works. So I like to use that one. I try to use this if I can get it to work, but if it doesn't, which I think it's because I have these lines here, just do divide, because divide works. The only thing is you'll have to right click, ungroup, and basically it made all these separate shapes, right? So I can come in here and delete the part that it should have left me with, right? It's just a little bit more manual, but not a big deal anyways. Okay, so from here I'm going to take this and I'm going to group the whole thing again. Command C, Command F, and then I'm going to drag it out. And then what I want to do is I'm going to do transform reflect. Yep. And I'm going to do it vertical so it's already the correct distance for me. And let's see, whoops. Yeah. I want these to align. Okay. So we'll do it like that. Yeah. So now I have this thing happening. Trying to think. Oh, okay. So from here, sometimes what I'll do is if I don't like a part, I'll just take that part and just literally delete it. That's something I'll do a lot while I'm working on stuff like this. And you know, I don't know if I love the way this is looking right now, but and you guys might experience a similar thing. So what I do just to keep record again is I'll hold Option while I click on this and drag, and it will duplicate whatever I have selected. So just hold Option, you'll get the double arrow, and then just pull down, and you'll have a duplicate of whatever you just had. Okay, so from here, let's see, I'm going to ungroup everything. And let's say I want to delete this, and this, and this. And you know what, maybe this too. Yeah. And maybe I want to put this like on this side instead. I think that I kind of like that better. And then what I might do is Command C, Command F, drag it up again. So I have a shape like that. And I think I'm going to maybe do 2 columns of this. So I'll do Command C, Command F again, and I'll just rotate it. Although it didn't really matter because they're exactly the same on both sides, but just to make sure, I just rotate it. And then from here I might do this. And I know that this is the same height as that, so I might just copy it and drag it up like that. And again, if you want to check the distance, see where your stuff's aligning, if you look, this is slightly off here. So what I can do is just, I mean, for the purpose of this, I'm just going to drag them to that line to make sure that they meet. Yeah, and if you look, this is actually slightly off too. So that's why I like to use guidelines, just because sometimes you don't even notice that they're off, but then if you get something printed, it will look very different. And you're like, oh, it's off. I didn't even notice. So it's nice to check things beforehand. And this is a demo here, so I'm not gonna go too crazy with it, but okay, so from here I'm going to say I'm gonna say that I like this, okay? So I'm gonna group everything, and now I'm going to basically tile it and see what happens. Again, just kind of like I've been doing from the beginning, but except it's just basically growing with complexity. So I'm going to hit Option and pull down to here, and I have this repeat happening. And I'm going to just go ahead and move to another artboard. I like to do that, keep track of everything. And I'm going to do Command C, Command F again, and I'm going to rotate it directly on it. If you hold Shift while you're rotating it, it will lock to 90-degree increments. Okay. So now I have this pattern. Next, what am I gonna do? I'm thinking, if this is getting hard for you guys to see, sometimes if I have trouble seeing, if a pattern starts getting too big, I'll go to the Artboard tool, which you can get to with Shift Q. And I'll just draw out like a big white one so I can see, because sometimes it gets confusing with the edges of the artboards. Okay, and so basically I'm going to do the same thing again. You see how those guides are on? I'm holding Option, and when I drag it, it uses the smart guides. Okay, so this is starting to get big for a 6x6 sample. That's one thing you need to keep in consideration, is like, is this going to be too big for the scale that I'm printing it at? And these might be kind of small, but it's really cool though to see what the pattern looks like when you keep repeating it, because then you kind of get you can tell that those are slightly off, but it looks very cool because you can see. Oh, I have my smart guides. Again, like I said, if you have a problem with that, yeah, turn off the snap to pixel and it will lock better. Oh, but see, I don't have all these groups, so let me group that real fast. And if you zoom in closer, sometimes it will adjust. And if you look, actually, I have, whoop, it is slightly off in a little spot right here, but I'm not going to worry about it for this demo. Okay. In fact, it's actually just this. So be careful and watch, and because it's super easy to get these offline. Looks like it was a mistake I had made up here. So yeah, that's one thing to consider when you're working on these. And that one looks like it's off, so I had it off earlier in the process. So yeah, be very careful with that, because you might not notice it until you get the print back, and then it might drive you nuts, or maybe it doesn't. Okay, so from here, you can hold Shift and rotate it. And what I'm going to do is go to this tool over here, and also just hit M to draw a rectangle. And if you not right click, if you, whoops, let me check. Oh, okay. Well, before I do anything, this all has to be a group. All of these have to be a group for this to work. So do Command G. Okay, so if you go back to this tool, but also you can just hit N, and you click once, left click once, you'll get this dialog box. And since I know my sample is 6 by 6, I'm just going to type in 6 inches and 6 inches. And there's my square, so this pattern is quite big. But anyways, let's just say I want to do like a little test here, right? So highlight both of them. Again, make sure the square is on top. You right click and go to bring the front. There's a quick command. I never use it. It's up, command, and then bracket if you want to. I only use it if I'm working on crazy projects where there's like a bazillion layers, but for this, I find it easier to right click. So, okay. With these both selected, you're going to go over here to the Pathfinder. You don't want minus front. Nope. Why does it give me that warning right quick? Oh, okay. That's right. Okay, so don't do the intersect. That's not what you want. Actually, what you want is crop. But Pathfinder, crop. Okay, so what that did is it gave me this. I didn't cut this in a way that's going to be like a repeat necessarily. Well, let me see if it does, because that would be something to take in consideration. It's like, it does kind of actually, is when you're cropping these squares, actually it does look pretty cool. When you're cropping these squares, you may want to consider, like, when you just, like, I just randomly pulled it, right, and this just happened to work out to be a repeatable pattern, right? But sometimes maybe the way you cut it, it doesn't work out that way. And so I actually made another repeatable pattern with this kind of by accident. That's kind of the beauty of working like this. It's just like getting all these crazy patterns and you're like, oh, that's cool, I like this. Yeah, kind of worked out. Actually, I really like that now. Okay, so, but I'm only going to print this 6 by 6 sample because it takes a long time to print, but that's not to say you can't do it. It's just to say, if you're going to do it, first start small with a sample. Okay, so to align this to the center of my artboard, I'm going to go to this tool here, align, make sure it's on align to artboard, and I'm going to, whoops, where'd it go? Oh, it's aligning to this artboard. So let me see something. Yeah, okay, so sometimes it might travel back to the original, but if you just highlight over and get it somewhat close, you can do this. And it looks like, let's see, it's another place you can check the side of it. Oh, maybe it's an illusion. No, it's just an illusion. Okay. Yeah, sometimes Illustrator looks funny and you can't tell. But if you ever need to see, to make sure if something's aligned correctly, see how it almost looks like there's a mistake when I was zoomed out? It looks like there's a line sticking out, but there wasn't. So even though I can also see in my, transform panel when I'm not in this Command Y, this is the outline mode. It's super useful if you're trying to line stuff up. So if you ever have an issue, Command Y is where it's at. And you just take Command Y again to get out of it. Okay, so now that I have this shape, you're going to export this as a SVG, which stands for Scalable Vector Graphic. So first I'm going to save the file. Before I do anything, I'm going to just save the Illustrator file. Sorry, 3D. Make sure you can find the file. Print test 2. Okay. So first I'll save it as an Illustrator document, and then I'm going to save it as an SVG. So let me see. Yep. Okay. So you go to the same location, file, save as, And then you're going to go to the drop down, and it's going to say SVG format. And I'm going to save it in the same location so then I can reference it. Let's see what all these settings are. Image location, bed. Yeah, I wouldn't bother. I would just save the file separately and then save a separate SVG, because Maya might. I haven't tried doing that, but I can see Maya just getting confused. So hit OK. Okay, so next I'm going to bring this into Maya and show you guys how I did the extrusions.